Hey, this is James Adair with Keller Williams Tampa Central. I have gone directly to the city to get some of the most important questions that a lot of us flood folks are facing now. And if you are in the city of Tampa, all this will apply to you. If you're in a different municipality, Hillsborough County, or over on the beaches, none of this will be important or applicable. You might pick up a nugget or two, but what we have happening here is not happening there. So anyway, fellas, introduce yourselves.
J.C. Hutchison, Chief Building Official, City of Tampa.
Dave Jennings, Assistant Building Official and Floodplain Administrator, City of Tampa.
Woohoo! All right, doesn't get any more of the source than this. And again, guys, thank you so much for taking your time. Let's just dive right in. Can you tell everybody about the 2-foot drywall exemption that we've set up for for Tampa?
So normally, any drywall removal would require a permit. What we've done under the emergency order issued by the mayor is to allow that as an exemption. Similar, we call that what's called a flood cut. ServPro comes in and they cut that 2 foot and, they kind of move on. So for us, the thought was to try to assist homeowners. If you notice that you did have flood damage and that's seeping up your walls and you kind of want to get that taken care of before you come and get a permit, we're allowing that to be an exemption. So up to 2 feet. To allow that, any flooding damage that you may have had in your house, at least the drywall is not continuing to seep up the drywall. So we've allowed that under the emergency order to be removed without a permit.
Let's say you're above 2 foot. Let's say you're in a 3 all the way up to the ceiling. Do people need a demo permit for that?
So then it would just be a normal permit. You would still come get a building permit. But one of the benefits we've done is that there is no fee for a permit. Right now, if it's associated with storm damage, you say storm damage in your permit fee. It asks you a question in the seller when you come to apply, and it will waive the fee. So then if you're above the 2 feet, you come in for an alteration, there may be some structural. We just want to make sure everything's done. You come in and you get that free permit. You can give us the documentation, tell us what you're doing, and we go from there. Dave, we've intentionally, expedited those services. So if you say, hey, you put in as flood damage, storm damage in your scope of work, we expedite that group. We're trying to take those and trying to get people back into their homes as soon as possible.
Love it. So quick question. A lot of the people who I've talked to are either in this stage where they're trying to get insurance money. They may be talking to some contractors, but there's a few that are really eager to get their homes and their lives back. And they haven't gone out to some of these visits that you guys have had in the community, where you've had officials there that could answer some of these random basic questions. There's a fear that if they speak up, then their name will appear on some sort of list that will send the code enforcement gurus out to red tag their house and beat them up and drag them into wherever they drag them. So can you talk a little bit about that?
So I would have to dispel that, as that's not necessarily what's happening. We don't have a list. Once you come out and, once again, we try to take that burden of the fee. The fee has gone away. If you just come to get information of what you can do for your house, as we're looking for, permitted construction, we want to make sure it's safe. We want to make sure it's code compliant. Like you said, even future insurance claims, we want to make sure that's covered. Your property value is being protected, and then any legal requirements. As you know, there's the new statute is that you have to disclose when you sell your property, did you have any flood damage? So then they're going to say, well, if you had flood damage, then where's your permit to do the work that you repair? You see, so for us, it's connecting all of those dots. So it's not necessarily that we're going out and we're like, oh, we know on this street that there's 4 people came in to ask us questions. It's like, we understand that people are in flux. We know that you, like you said, you either have the cash on hand, most don't, but you're going to call the insurance, you're waiting for that funding to come in, and you just want to know what you can and can't do. So for us, this is strictly educational. There's no enforcement behind it. There's no, carrot and a stick. We're not waiting for something to hit you over the head. It's just to get that information out there, because we know we're trying not to do a short-term band-aid for a solution. You may want to sell this property in 2-3 years. And if you don't do the work and you don't have it properly permitted, it'll come back to bite you then, where you can't sell that property. So we're really just trying to stay in front of it to give people as much information as we can before they start doing work, because they may be doing improper work. And now you've got to tear that out and do it right. So we really just want to stay in front to be educational.
Now,
So let's just go ahead,
James, that one of the things that JC and our administrator, Abby Feely, was doing is doing pop-up centers to actually process permits and hand out permits and print them same day for some of those trade permits that people do need So those pop-up centers that we had at Garden Civic Center, some on Davis Island, right after Helene, those were for those purposes, for information, to give you documents, to help people understand what's next, what their next steps are, and also to issue those permits that we could as the same day. So it was a kind of a twofold situation. Get out in the public so they don't have to go driving all over. Some of the people may have had their cars that were flooded out, so that we made it available on certain spots to actually get permits issued at the sites. We had plan reviewers and permit techs there to assist the citizens of the city of Tampa to get their permits and get their information that they needed.
And James, just to add on to that, we've had 592 permits that have been applied for under storm damage. So that's over the last 2 months. 592 permits have been applied for.
That's it?
Yeah, that's it. But we have 333 that have been issued. We've had 141 that are complete. They came all the way through and got what they needed. So, like I said, we're just continuing to monitor it. But kind of as you mentioned, it's like, we expected a bigger number up front, but if you don't have the funds to do it right now, you're still kind of in that limbo. So just understanding that the system is set up to be able to accept those permits, to expedite those permits, and we're here to help.
Fantastic. So let's say somebody was so unfortunate. Bob comes out to help Mildred, and he puts up a bunch of drywall over, messed up wiring, whatever, right? And so he fixes this, that, and the other. Mm-hmm. And then somehow a red tag happens. However it gets there, stop work order, whatnot. How does one remedy generally a stop work order or a red tag?
So what we've done is during this time, unless it is due life safety issue, like if it's a structural failure, we see somebody doing some major work, that's where the red tag would come. We actually have a yellow notice, which is a warning. We have not issued anything. It's not issuing a fine or anything yet. It's a yellow tag. I wish I had it. I would have brought one in and showed you what it looks like. Let me see if during this call, I might be able to grab one and get you one and show you what it looks like. But so you'll get the yellow tag. The yellow notice just says warning. We'll say, hey, we noticed that this property does not have a permit. Please contact our office for more information. That's it. We're not citing, we're not fining you, we're not taking you directly to court, because we understand people don't know how this process works. Some people think that they're okay to do whatever on their property. So and so unless it is the worst of the worst, like if somebody has demoed a house or something, like it has to be something major where we would straight come in with a red tag. We're going to come in with this yellow notice. It's a warning. No fine, no issue, nothing has been added, but it's just saying, hey, we notice that you do not have a permit for the work that's going on here. Please give us a call. Normally, we follow that up within 48 hours. Now, after that 48 hours, if you haven't called us and let us know that you're starting to work, we may elevate to the red tag. So it's not immediate red tag. It's a warning first. We try to give you some time. We hope you reach out to us. Once again, it's a free permit. You just got to tell us know what your scope of work is, and we can get you going. So the hope is that, you can help, you can work with us, but you get the notice first, then potentially the stop order if we don't hear anything back. Like if you're just still blowing and going, we're like, hey man, like we got to have a permit. There may be some other things that we may need from you considerably, especially if you're in flood. Your threshold letter and understanding what that determination is. We have to have that information. So, because the bigger part of that is if we don't continue to follow that and don't continue to enforce that, we can lose our insurance discounts. And that is a big deal. And if you've been reading in the news, you see that there's some other municipalities in the state of Florida that unfortunately has happened to, and they lost their discount. So now that 25%, they don't have it anymore. And so we don't want to be in that boat. So we'd rather educate you on the front, get as much information to you as we can to make sure that we're not also dealing with that same situation.
It's nobody wants to pay more for insurance.
Correct.
So, all right. Can you just verify if all of the areas that have been flooded have been documented? There's tons of stories out there about other municipalities, etc. How do you know, or how does the public know that they are indeed in an area that's been documented that it's got this damage?
So we have a system during our post damage storm assessment that we physically went out with our code enforcement group, and we went across the whole city. We have it's a system. It's called Crisis Track. It actually, if I can share my screen real quick to show you. Let's go here. And so this shows us all that this is only from Milton. but this shows us from Milton and Helene, we have both of the storms. You can see those dots on the screen. That lets us know, damage, minor, and affected. So staff is able to see what happened. Those arrow, those colors on the streets kind of show the staff that went through the neighborhoods to track these things. So for us, we're able to see that information. We helped create it. We helped collect it. Our staff was out there in the field collecting this information along with code enforcement. So ideally, when people come back to say, hey, I'm in this area and I had storm damage, we have a checks and balances to say, okay, yes, this area wasn't storm damage. They did collect this information. So it's imported here. We have it. We, as the staff, literally collected it on their cell phones going through the neighborhood. So we have this for Milton. We have it for Helene. So we're able to get that information. There we go. So this is the notice. You'll see this one first. You'll see the yellow notice before you get this one. So we don't want to get to this one. But we told inspection staff, if you see somebody out that's not doing work without a permit, unless it's just egregious, if it's a structural failure and you're worried about some other issues, yes, you go straight to the stop work order. However, we're doing this one first because we do know people are kind of, like you said, just trying to understand what's going on.
So if somebody's at home and they're like, but the city won't know if I do all my drywall, if I had damage or not. And I tell them, I said, listen, there's satellite pictures of like debris in the yard after the storm. You guys maybe went the ground way and actually had staff walking and talking and documenting.
Correct. We rode down the streets. We went down and took pictures along with that. So we know the level of damage because we have to determine that, So for us is, as we got that information for post-storm damage assessment. That's what we did both situations for Milton and for Helene. We drove all of the city that we could. There were certain areas that were still inaccessible that 48 hours after the storm, but the areas that we were accessible and we could get to, we have pictures and we documented the damage.
And then is there a connection to FEMA and what they expect of municipalities to document damage, or is it just part of your internal processes?
I'll let Dave take that one, but yes.
Yeah, FEMA is one of those agencies that do come out and insisting or trying to assist citizens with either flood damage repairs or funds, grants. We are required to provide all of those properties that we have documented on Crisis Track. You saw the orange and yellow, and then the red. Those that were in red that were damaged, major damage, they will be receiving a substantial damage notice from the city of Tampa here in the next week, advising them that their property has received substantial damage and that the repairs and goes through a substantial improvement review. And the definitions on that and how to get started and how to contact us. So there are things that FEMA will expect, and we will know more once we meet with FEMA here in the next day or two when they're coming into town, that they expect us to provide or to review and look at. But we are responsible in order to keep our insurance rating and our insurance reductions down. We are required to do certain things that may be a little painful in the sense of getting documents or a letter from the city, but we are here to assist and help and get people through this process.
So you brought up a really good side point, and that is that the letter will go out to the people who are substantially damaged from sort of that drive-by analysis. Are they at that point able to do that appraisal review and go under the $65 a foot rule? $64.90?
Yes, they can go through that process. I would advise anybody who is out there, it is really simple math. You're just comparing your depreciated value from Hillsborough County tax assessors. You're doing 65% of that is your allowable top end to do the repairs. Then you do your cost of construction, which is $64.85. That way you know where you're at. You can determine that simply by your square footage. If you've had water intrusion and you've got 2 or 3 foot of water that came inside the house, you need to go through that process because you're going to need to pull permits. You're going to need to get inspections on that work in order to go through the substantial damage determination process. but it's important that people now can do that assessment on their own using a calculator to know where they stand. And if they're close or they're over and they need help or they need to have a discussion, I'm more than willing to have any of my staff, any of my plans examiners or permit staff, walk them through it and help them out with that determination. I've been giving letters for people to use to get their houses torn down and get their insurance to help them pay to build back at the higher level. So that is an ongoing process, and this will probably go on for the next 4 or 5 months as people still get funding and know what they're going to get, what their insurance company talks to them about. Unfortunately, you hear these stories all the time that, oh, it's taken a year to get processed. I don't want it to take a year. I want you to get your process done, but the funding and the money is always the leading edge of getting the work done.
So however long the money takes, that takes precedence.
People don't have a lot of liquid cash to go through $50,000 or $100,000 worth of repairs. They're waiting for insurance to assist them, and insurance companies don't give up the money as quickly and easily as everyone would like them to.
No, they don't. All right. So in review, go back over those numbers one more time. We did this on our last call, but one more time on the heated square footage, depreciated, all that stuff.
Yeah, if you go to the Hillsborough County Property Appraisers website, and there's a in the center mass of their page, they have a 50% rule calculator. If you click on that link, you can type in your address. It will give you the depreciated value, and it will also give you the 50% value. You can take that number and start using that number, backdooring it with the $64.85 a square foot, taking the square footage of the house. If it's all underwater, all the square footage of the house is calculated, and then put those two numbers together. And hopefully that calculated cost of construction with the numbers we use is lower than what's on the tax assessor's website. And if you have that, then that works not a substantial damage. It's just normal repairs, and you can go forward with pulling your permits and not having to worry about going back and being flood compliant structure.
Got it. And then is it 60% or is it 65%?
It is, when you do the tax assessor's website, their number comes out, interestingly enough, right at 60%.
Okay.
When you do that math, that number that comes out now, they've done a different work with their cost of the market value of the structure. They've added a little bit to it, and that adding to it has brought that number to a 60%, which so you can use that for the city of Tampa number.
Got it. All right, perfect. Thank you for explaining that again. People who aren't paying attention, and then when all of a sudden they need to, then they'll hopefully find this again and be able to, get that refresher. All right. So there's been a little rumor, and I think you guys will be able to clear this up for me. Are flood zone homes that were flooded treated any differently when it comes to permitting, et cetera, than a non-flood? So we had plenty of homes that were both flood zone and non-flood zone that got flooded. Are they treated any differently in permitting? What do they need separately if they need to go and get permits?
If they've been under both storms, under flood damage, and they've had, whether the flood zone or not, if they put that storm damage in the description of their permit application, we will expedite those processes. We know whether they've been damaged because you saw a crisis track, all the little dots all over the place. We know what kind of effects water lines are. So we know whether they've had storm damage. So if they put it in the description, then those processes go quicker for them. If it's just a repair they want to make normally, then it goes through the normal process. And we're trying to do a 60-40 split in our reviews, trying to get damage out of the door versus those that are just doing normal repairs and doing normal renovations, so that we kind of expedite those storm damage processes. So if they've had water from a storm damage, we're expediting those.
And if they're in, I think so, but if they're in the flood and you get a building permit, then we will need that determination letter. I mean, that has to be added with that permit. So if you're not in a flood zone, you just come get a permit from us just like you normally get. If you're in a flood zone and you're coming to get a permit, this would be whether it's storm time or not, you have to get the permit and you have to provide us that determination letter to understand that you're not going over that 50%. So we have to have both of those, so that's the difference. If you're in the flood and if you had storm damage, you owe us the permit and you owe us the FEMA square footage to make sure you're not over the threshold. If you're not in the flood zone, then you still come get a permit just like you normally would any other time.
Perfect. So it's free. That's important.
Yes.
And
Yes.
you need your determination letter if you're in a flood zone. If you're not in a flood zone, no determination letter.
That is correct.
All right. So we already talked about a demolish permit. We don't really need to worry about that here. Actually, it used to be back in the day, if you were going to do a renovation on a property or whatnot before you started, you needed some sort of demo permit. Obviously, most of these people already have all their stuff out of their house. Is that even relevant in this circumstance?
Not particularly. It just, like you said, if you've already ripped everything out at this point, you're just saying what you're putting back in, so at this point, we do get some BLDs if you're doing a whole house demolition. Like if you're tearing the whole thing down, yes, we need a demo permit for that. But if most people now, they do a combo permit anyway, Dave, that's, they submit the
Correct.
demo part as a part of the full work. And we suggest that anyway. If right behind, you're going to tear this out and put this back in, don't apply for two separate permits, just apply for one and just show us a demo page on there to say, hey, these things are being removed. These things are going back. And so most people will just pull one permit now instead of two. If you're demoing like the whole house and you don't know what you're going to be doing with your house, or you putting your house back or not, then okay, just get a standalone demo permit and then you can wait and let us know what you're coming to do in the future. But if your intent is to go right back in, just add the demo part, what you're taking out, as a part of your permit submission. Just tell us, hey, I'm cleaning this out, I'm taking this out, I'm clearing that out, and it's a part of just one permit. You don't get two.
And does that need to be, if you're just doing demo, you're taking it down, is there specs or plans that have to be submitted with that, or that's just a basic sort of?
Well, hopefully, I hope you have something to determine by, because once again, staff has to go out and compare against something. So if you say, hey, I'm clearing my whole kitchen out and your kitchen was on the left side and now it's on the right, we're going to ask, how did you cap that? How did you see what I'm saying? So if you're taking advantage of that to remodel, we got to have a base to work from. So if you got your old floor plans from your house and and you can just put a big X on it. Hey, this is all going away. Great. At least we have a point of reference. So when staff is going out there, we have something to compare it to. That's really what it is. Staff wants to make sure when they do go inspect that it's being done correctly. And it's like, well, like the situation I just gave you, if you say, hey, you want to move your living room, you want to put your kitchen now, you want to swap them. Well, that's nice. How did you cap off those facilities? How did you take care of that kind of stuff? You see what I'm saying? So those are additional questions we're going to want to know.
And that sort of makes sense. I was thinking about if the house is just cleared, but you brought up a good point. I think one of the limitations that people, or one of the hurdles, is that people say, oh, I got to go get scaled drawings, an engineer or something. And what you're indicating is, even if you have a previous plan, a floor plan possibly, that you could just do an X out.
Because if you're doing an owner builder, you're acting on your own behalf. So I'm assuming not everybody's drafting and doing all that kind of stuff. So whatever, something, you have something to give us a reference point to. So then staff can go out there and collaborate with what you're doing. We just have to make sure, okay, well, if that's all you're doing, well, I just need to fix my bedroom, I had some damage right in there, or we're just replacing a window or whatever. We just have to have a point of reference. So if you have some old plans, you have something that's existing, we can use that. And you kind of superimpose, okay, well, I'm going to take this out, I'm going to move that, just so we have something to start from. Because if you just say, hey, I'm tearing this out, and we're going to have more questions and answers there. We're going to be like, hey, well, what are you tearing out? How are you tearing it out? What do you do? So, the more information you have, the better.
And then free bonus, if people don't know that they might already have a footprint on file or in the archives, how would they go about checking with you guys to see if that exists, if they don't know how to navigate the system?
So you can give us a call, 274-3100. Our option 1 is our call center. They've been kind of handling those, or you can go to aca.tampagov.net and literally just type in your address. If you have a permit that's been issued, how long is it, Dave? We've had Acela since
2015.
2015. So if you have
okay,
then you can get your floor plans of your property. You can see what they look like, and it's downloadable as a PDF. You can print them, you can save them to your file. And like I said, if you're able to just superimpose over that, especially if it's an owner builder, you're doing it yourself, but we've got to have a point of reference. We got to have something. So that's usually the place to get that information.
Perfect. Let's say, and I know you guys don't necessarily endorse a contractor one way or the other, but where do people go to find out if a contractor is registered with or is somehow above board with the city of Tampa?
So we don't have a register ourselves. There's been two issues there, and the one is that there is an emergency order as well from the state that's allowing out-of-state contractors to come in and do work. So as long as you're a licensed contractor in the state that you come from, you enter it into our Acela system, and we accept that. We just confirm that they're a licensed contractor there, but you don't have to get Florida licensing. Yes, you made the face that we made because
Holy crap. Don't get me wrong. Maybe people are above board, but they don't know Florida building code. They don't have the book. I appreciate probably DeSantis made this open so that we had more labor, but oh my.
Correct. So as long as they're a licensed contractor where they are, they entered into our system, we accept it. So whether it's from Florida, Alabama, Texas, Mississippi, if they're coming in to do work, as long as they're licensed, we will accept it. So there's usually a process for reciprocity. They have waived that during the storm. So until that emergency order is lifted, there are, like I said, it makes it a little tougher for us to say if they're a legit contractor or not, because as long as they have a licensure and the state has allowed them to come in to do work. So we're kind of in the front end of that. So, but we are just kind of going by ear and just seeing how that works out. But we're trying to assist as we can. So it doesn't automatically lock you out if you're not a Florida licensed contractor that you can't get a permit. So if somebody tells you that, that's not true. So if they're coming to the city of Tampa, and even if you're from Texas, Alabama, Georgia, South Carolina, wherever you may be from, you can still submit and get a permit in our system. So it won't kick you out if you're not a Florida licensed contractor.
Interesting. So we need to make sure we're putting that information out there too. Because you could have, let's say, a legit guy or gal, and I can't go through permitting because they won't allow me in. That's not an excuse.
That is not true.
Huh. Wow. I'm blown away because not that Florida's got the best trades, don't get me wrong, but some of those states you mentioned, their licensure is pretty lax. Anyway.
Woo, and Dave, we checked that. We had Dave kind of told me, I guess during Irma, the state did the same thing back then. So that's kind of when we kind of made sure our system could accept people outside of Florida, because we didn't want to have to run into that and have to do some extra programming to get a permit.
So the infrastructure was already there inside the software. Got it. Okay. All right. So as wrapping up, what other things are you seeing that you wish more people knew as they're coming into your office, essentially getting ready before they face you guys, or that you're already seeing in permitting that's becoming a bigger problem that nobody really thought about? What's out there that we haven't thought of?
I'll let Dave go first because he kind of deals with it a bit more on the flood side than I do.
Most of them are homeowners. Homeowners coming in trying to pull their own permits and get the information, which they should. But most of it is not from not knowing the process. They understand a little bit of the process. They just want to get it clarified. They want to make sure that what they're dealing with is right. Many of the clients right now are coming in and asking questions about insurance, what FEMA is going to offer. We can assist them with some links for FEMA for some grants. Many of them are asking about grants to lift or elevate their house. There are some grants and funding out there from FEMA, but as anything else, that money comes and goes real quick. So unfortunately, a lot of the monies and grants and funds are out there are now starting to get smaller because people have already put in claims on it. But homeowners knowing what they should or shouldn't do, they're not going to be the most intelligent ones because they're not the contractors. They don't understand. That's why we're here to help them. That's why we're here to walk them through it. Any questions they have, they're not dumb questions. They're questions we can answer and we can help them with. If we can't, we'll try to give them information and get them out there. But at this point in time, with what we've gone through for the last couple of months, we're here to do what we can to assist everybody to get their buildings back safe, get people back in their homes, while we still are being compliant with our FEMA and our NFIP participation also.
How about you, JC, at the administrative level? What are you seeing?
Just more questions. you know, everyone's really, even though the storm literally has not even been more than 45 days since it hit, it's just people kind of understanding what they can and can't do. And that's, you know, that's one reason why we did the virtual town hall, is just to explain what doesn't need a permit. Like at any time, if you want to replace your fence, as long as it's 7 feet or lower in the city of Tampa, you can replace it. Like you don't get a permit from us for that. So people who have some of those vinyl fences or some of those chain link fences that got damaged, that doesn't need a permit at any time. And so for us, it's been more of the clarification of what needed a permit and what didn't. You know, if you're just trying to, you know, per the building code, if you're just trying to replace shingles on your roof that's less than 500 square feet, that doesn't need a permit. So at all. So even before the storm came, if you got just that minor damage where you only needed to replace, you know, 500 square feet of shingles on your roof, you're okay. You know, if you ended up, you know, somehow, you know, most of the stuff you had to do in your house and then it just, you know, it boiled down to painting, tiling, carpeting, that kind of stuff, that doesn't need a permit. And so ideally, you know, if you may have gotten just a few inch, you know, an inch or so in your house and you're like, well, all right, I cut the 2 foot of drywall. JC said it was okay. And I put my carpet back down. Am I all right? Like, I get, you know, so
Yeah.
for us, it was more the educational portion, just to explain what needed a permit and what didn't. And when you do need a permit, this is the process. And so for us, that's probably been the biggest thing, is just educating the public. As Dave mentioned, a lot of it's homeowners. You know, if you've been living in this house for 30, 40 years and you've never had to come get a permit, and all of a sudden your property's flooding, you're like, well, what do I do? And you've never interacted with us. So definitely that's a learning curve for all, is for them to understand what's needed, and for our staff to, you know, to have that patience to kind of go through the homeowner and walk them through all of the steps. Like Dave said, the contractor, we can skip the first 8 steps because you know how to create an Acela record. You know how to do all this. But a homeowner coming in, they're at square one. They nothing. And so for us, it's just going through each one of those steps and explaining that process to the citizen.
Whew. Well, if you've stuck through the call, you've been able to glean some amazing information. And if you're not in this, or if you're a realtor and your clients are going to be in this soon, make sure you come back, watch the whole video if you haven't already, because this is really right from the source. This is the kind of information that we need. So I want to thank everybody for joining us today. James Adair, the agent who cares, the city of Tampa.